All right, guys, welcome into my official college football week number 11 instant reaction hot takes, where I give off 15 different takes that I've gathered throughout the college football games that happened yesterday. Number one, TCU is in a weird position after the Texas win. So, guys, let's think about this for a second. TCU, number 4 in the country, on the road, 7-point underdogs as the number 4 team. They beat Texas. Total great performance by TCU on defense. But now, is Texas unranked? Like, it's just such a weird situation because there was such a discrepancy between TCU and Texas in terms of TCU being 4th, Texas being 18th, but Texas was 7-point favorites. So it's kind of interesting there. But no, guys, TCU right now, I still think it's a similar path. They win out, they're in. It is interesting. What if they lose to Baylor but then win out and they're a one-loss Big 12 champ? That's where things, aren't as clear. TCU right now, you win out, you've got to be in. We're already talking about a potential Georgia-TCU playoff matchup, and I'll talk about that later in this video, but we do give TCU credit. Guys, that game, Quinn Ewers, you have to be concerned if you're a Texas fan about his development. My goodness, you're expecting him. He has the game at Kansas State. He plays really well. You're expecting at home, have a good game. The defense played well. They hold TCU to 3 first-half points, and it just doesn't happen. Very odd Big 12 game. It was 3-0 at half. We do give TCU credit for that win. Number 2, the ACC is still done. So there is a little bit of hype about North Carolina, Drake May being a one-loss team. They've got no chance, in my opinion. There's far too many teams that have better defenses and that are more complete. And then the same thing with Clemson. Clemson just has too big of a quarterback situation where I think at this point we can totally write the ACC off. They're probably going to have a one-loss conference champion because North Carolina and Clemson are going to face each other, both with 1 losses. Somebody's going to win that game and be the ACC champion, but there's not enough spots. The resume's not good enough. The ACC this year is not good enough. So I think they're completely out, even with Clemson and North Carolina winning, and people try and create narratives and say, Drake May and North Carolina should be in the playoffs. They have far too bad of a defense at this point. I'm sorry to put them in. USC is a lot worse than you think. So yeah, guys, I cannot take credit for this narrative. But, people, I've been talking to people, things like that. USC, when you actually look at their advanced numbers, are just really not a good football team. And now there's this narrative that because Oregon lost, USC slides right into that number 4 playoff spot if they win out. Number one, I think there's 0% chance they're going to win out because you look at their last 2 games, UCLA and Notre Dame, and then a very hard game in the Pac-12 championship. I don't see them winning out, but their defense is bad. They've gotten extremely fortunate and very lucky in terms of turnover margin. A lot of that is fluky. They've gotten very lucky. So guys, don't let the national media, create this narrative that USC should be a playoff team. I will say, when you're talking about matchups, would I rather see Georgia versus TCU or Georgia versus USC? Both TCU and USC, I think, lose to Georgia, but I probably would rather see USC. But again, when you're talking about the teams, USC's gotten very lucky. I just think we're blinded by the offense and Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley and things like that. Make sure, I just want people to understand, the media is going to say, oh, USC's good. Guys, they're really not good when you actually look at the numbers. The Pac-12 is done, but it's a much improved conference. This is such a great conference. You've got Washington, really good team. Oregon, really good team. UCLA, yes, I know they lost to Arizona. They're still a really good team. USC, Utah. This is a deep conference. This is the argument for a 12-team playoff. This conference ate itself because it's so good The Pac-12 is a really good conference, guys. It's sad. They're not going to get, unless USC does win out. If USC wins out, I agree. They should be in because they're going to get big wins. I don't think they're going to win out. If they do win out, they should be in, but I don't think they're going to win out. Of course, a lot of that depends on other stuff, but the Pac-12 is a very good conference. It's way better than we thought it was. It's so much deeper, and just overall, I really like watching the Pac-12. The SEC kind of sucks this year. So yeah, guys, LSU, making the SEC championship, is that a team worthy? I mean, I just think the SEC, is Ole Miss really that good? Is LSU really that good? A&M completely falls on their face this year. Alabama is just something off throughout the entire season. I think the SEC, while it's still admitting, with the recruiting, with the talent overall, pound for pound, still the best conference in college football. I think this whole moxie that the SEC has, where they're so much better than everyone else, I don't think it stands up this year. You can say Tennessee, but Tennessee is a flawed football team too, in terms of them, trying to run up the score to make it look better. It's real sad what they're doing. So the SEC this year, it's just... you see these SEC fans, and it's like, you're really nothing special. This year, it's just not that good. When you're talking about LSU making the SEC championship with Jaden Daniels and Brian Kelly, I mean, this is just not that good of a conference, folks. I'm sorry. Big Ten offenses are next level bad. Oh my goodness. The Big Ten offenses. I was trying to get a gauge on how good or bad Ohio State's secondary is. It is impossible because they face no one. Michigan faces no one. Look at what Michigan faced this week. The Nebraska passing attack, their second and third string quarterbacks. They don't have receivers. I guess they do have Trey Palmer, but the quarterbacks are so bad. Ohio State is facing a quarterback who is like a 41% completion percentage. Last week, they're facing Northwestern. You've got Minnesota who refuses to throw. You've got Iowa who can't throw. You've got Wisconsin who struggles to throw. You've got Maryland who suddenly can't complete a pass. Oh my goodness. It's like Michigan and Ohio State are just literally, Michigan wasn't even trying against Nebraska. That was the most bland offensive performance I've ever seen because they're not going to show anything before their Ohio State game. How about Illinois also having a very bad offense? And Purdue, they were better this week, but they also have a bad offense. So it's not looking good in the Big Ten, but guys, there is hope for the Big Ten to get 2 teams in the playoff. You're going to need some things to happen. We will talk about it. UCF is the New Year 6 Group of 5 team. Guys, they're the team this year. I've said it from the beginning. I've believed in this team. This is from week 4. Me looking at their offensive explosiveness, their offensive yards per play, their FPI, and I said, listen, this UCF team is really good. I recognized it, and they have just been crushing everyone. They easily handle Tulane. Tulane is still a good football team, but this UCF team does need respect. And they're, in my opinion, I think they're going to make a New Year's Six Bowl, maybe in a matchup with LSU, and I think that would be a total mismatch if they faced LSU. I think they'd hammer LSU. Notre Dame has a chance to beat USC. Yes, so this is a very... stylistic matchup. Notre Dame, USC. Notre Dame's going to win next week. I forget who I think they face Boston College at home. So they are going to probably be ranked inside the top 16 going into this game against USC on the road. They've got a way better defense than USC. They're starting to play better on offense. They had a really good offensive first half against Navy. Notre Dame does have a chance, even though it's on the road, to beat USC, and what a huge win that would be for Marcus Freeman. They've been playing so much better. Notre Dame has. What a turnaround for them. It is so inexplicable that they lost that home game about a month ago to Stanford, because I had said before that Stanford game, I was saying that Notre Dame was underrated. Casual fans don't understand because they really just go by the media narrative, and the media narrative was Notre Dame sucks. They lost to Marshall and Ohio State. And, Ohio State sucks because they only beat Notre Dame by 11 or 10 or whatever. when really Ohio State had a very nice performance against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's just a really good team. They didn't want you to have that narrative. I said that's what it was. They inexplicably lose to Stanford. If they would have beaten Stanford, they'd be in the top 10 right now. So that is an interesting thing to talk about. The next thing, Big Ten can get 2 teams in, so it's, the situation with the Big Ten Conference. Michigan loses a really close game to Ohio State. If you're the Big Ten, the ACC is out of the picture. The Big 12 can possibly be out of the picture, but it's going to be a debate. A lot of it depends. If TCU loses to Baylor next week, then they win the Big 12 championship. There's a debate between a one-loss Michigan and a one-loss TCU who wins their conference championship, and I think that becomes harder for Michigan. If Ohio State loses a close game to Michigan, I think a lot of it depends on actually what Notre Dame does. If Notre Dame somehow wins out, Penn State wins out, both of those wins for Ohio State on the road at Penn State and versus Notre Dame, if Notre Dame beats USC, that win becomes a top 12, maybe 10 win for Ohio State, because at that point Notre Dame is 9-3 with a win over USC, and Penn State wins out. They're going to be top 12. Now Ohio State, even if they lose to Michigan, they do have a chance. A lot of it depends. If TCU wins out, they're in, no doubt, over either one-loss Michigan or Ohio State. If TCU loses, if USC loses, the Pac-12 is completely out. The ACC is already out. The SEC is looking more and more likely. Georgia is an auto lock. Tennessee, if Tennessee somehow lost to like South Carolina, that'd be crazy, but a one-loss Tennessee probably in as well. And that's where the situation currently is with the Pac-12 pretty much out of it, depending on what happens with USC. So possible 2 teams can get in. I think for Michigan, the non-conference schedule, although it is funny that UConn keeps winning. Guys, the problem is UConn's FPI is still horrible, even though they keep winning, because it was so bad to begin with. The Michigan non-conference schedule may kill them. For Ohio State, if they somehow lost to Michigan in a close game, of course, if you get blown out at home, you're not going to make it. It is what it is. But if you do lose a close game, there is a scenario where if, beating Notre Dame in week 1 could be your saving grace, depending on what else happens. I would love 2 Big Ten teams to get in. I want to see a Ohio State-Michigan national championship. That would be the best thing for the sport of college football. And of course, people say, no, it's horrible. Guys, how many times have we seen Alabama, Georgia play like these national championship games and the ratings are a record low? If you have Michigan, Ohio State in the national championship, that's the highest rated game in college football history. Trust me on that. It will be the Ohio State-Michigan game of the, well, unfortunately, we really want to see Georgia lose here because I want to see a 1v2 Ohio State-Michigan game. Unfortunately, it's not happening because, Georgia's facing these bad teams. Mississippi State, these teams are just not good, and they're beating them, so I don't think we're going to get the 1-2. It's going to be 2v3, but I will guarantee the Ohio State-Michigan game will be the highest-rated regular season game in college football this season. It normally always is. Ohio State versus Tennessee is fun. So, guys, we're starting to look ahead at these potential playoff matchups. This is I won't say very likely. This is a potential 2v3 matchup, and it's 2 really good offenses. It's 2 suspect secondaries. There's going to be a ton of points. The over-under in this game would probably be at like 76 or 77. Maybe a little bit lower, but like 73. These 2 offenses, it would be really, really good. This is something we need to see. This would be C.J. Stroud, Hendon Hooker. Ohio State secondary is really suspect, but I think Ohio State would also throw all over Tennessee. You're talking about like a 45-37 type shootout. This is an epic playoff matchup that we could potentially see. Georgia versus TCU may be ugly, but you do have to give TCU credit. So yes, this is the 1v4 potential matchup. Georgia-TCU if TCU wins out. I think TCU would lose comfortably. I think this playoff game would be very similar to the Alabama-Cincinnati playoff game last year, where we all knew Cincinnati had no chance, but they did deserve to make the playoffs. If TCU goes undefeated, they probably have no chance against Georgia, but you have to let them make the playoffs because they deserve it. It is what it is, guys. We really want to see that 2v3 Ohio State-Minnesota matchup. Brendan Armstrong, wow. So this was just something crazy. Brendan Armstrong on the first play of the game against Pittsburgh at home throws a pick six. On the second play of the game, this is how crazy it was. The kickoff happens, the first play, it's a touchback. Brendan Armstrong throws a pick six, another touchback, another pick six. He throws back-to-back pick sixes on the first two plays of the game. They're down 14-0 with, 15 seconds into the game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh scores 28 first quarter points and beats Virginia, I think 38-3. Just crazy stuff there. Penn State is New Year's Six bound and is rising. Penn State is not going to be a fun team to deal with in the Big Ten in the coming years with their talent pool, with what their team is doing right now. Their quarterback situation is only going to get better. Their running back situation is really, really young. This Penn State team is going to be scary. And the Big Ten, if Ohio State, they're still going to be there. Penn State's going to be a top 10 team. Michigan's going to be a top 10 team. The Big Ten East is going to be the best division in college football. These three teams could all be top 5 teams. This conference, this division is loaded. I can't say the same thing about the West, obviously. FSU is a top 15 team in college football. We really have to start thinking about moving Florida State inside the top 15. I'm all for quarterbacks improving, and what we've seen from Jordan Travis, this team is on an absolute death march right now. It is crazy. They should be ranked at least 15th in the next playoff rankings. They have 3 losses. You can do it. I would put Penn State inside the top 10. I'm moving Notre Dame up inside the top 12. I'm moving FSU up inside the top 15. I'm dropping LSU. I'm dropping Alabama. Some of these SEC teams are just severely overranked because their conference really isn't that good. And then we see the media narrative and we watch the games, and unfortunately casual people can't really understand that, no, LSU just kind of sucks. And listen, I like LSU. They're a fun little team. But you look at their game against Arkansas and people are like, yay, they won. They won 13-10 against a backup quarterback. They're not good. If that's the bar for LSU football, wow. So, yeah, that's the opinion on that. The value won this week. So I thought this was interesting, guys. TCU was 7-point underdogs at Texas. You think that's the easiest bet ever. TCU is undefeated. Texas has 3 losses. TCU +7. And of course it wins, and then we all overthink it and say it's going to lose. And then Ole Miss +12 versus Alabama. That, they were always going to cover. Alabama ends up beating Ole Miss. They were severely outgained. Ole Miss outgained Bama by 100 yards. That game had no juice to it. I was really disappointed, but the value won. Just when we think we're going to go the opposite way, we're going to outsmart everyone. I didn't say to bet Texas -7, but I kind of thought TCU +7 was too good to be true. And of course it ends up winning, and TCU wins the game outright. So if you had TCU money line, congratulations. That's some 3D chess. Please no Iowa in the Big Ten championship. Yes, the last thing the Big Ten conference needs. Really, honestly, there's no. It's impossible. Fox has to be so pissed off the Big Ten West is this bad, because it's like the Big Ten championship game it's useless. Like what? So it's going to be Ohio State. These are the potential matchups. The Big Ten championship: Ohio State versus Iowa. Ohio State versus Purdue. Ohio State versus Illinois. Ohio State versus Minnesota. I would be happy with Minnesota making it. At this point, Minnesota possibly, or Illinois, or Purdue. No Iowa, and, well, obviously Wisconsin can't make it now, I don't think, because they lost to Iowa. But, yeah. So the potential Big Ten champion, these are the 4 scenarios for the Big Ten championship. Ohio State versus Iowa. Ohio State versus Illinois. Ohio State versus Purdue. Ohio State versus Minnesota. Those are I think at this point, the only 4 options for the Big Ten championship game. when it comes to that. So those are my college football week 11 hot takes, guys. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.